Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. It's Mike, the founder of FlowTrack. So we got an exciting Lunch and Learn Monday today. This is a part of our weekly series. Every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be doing Lunch and Learn. So the first part of Lunch and Learn, I'm going to be showing you guys how to do something really cool inside FlowTrack that you may not even know was possible. And on the second half, we're going to be going over just a live Q&A where you guys can literally ask us anything and we can help out. So let's get started. Today, we're going to be going over APIs. And we actually have two different types of APIs that you can use inside FlowTrack. The first one that we have is our public APIs, right? We got hundreds, I think it's like 300 different plus APIs. You can literally do every single thing you can do in the app, you can do through the API. Really, really awesome. We actually use our own API ourselves, right? Everything we do is through our own API. So you can do it too, whether that's connecting a different third-party app, or you're developing some sort of wrapper or system that sits in front of FlowTrack, or just a more close, tight-knit integration with a third-party tool. You can do it all. And then the second type of API that we have is custom APIs that you create yourself. And let me show you what that looks like. So when you're designing a form in the database, that form automatically creates a custom API endpoint for you. So the other day we did a home services demo, right? This was building a dynamic quotation engine for home services. Basically, long story short, based on the user's answers, they selected they need carpet cleaning, window cleaning, how many floors their house is. Based on that, it actually spits out a price of the quote. Well, just by us designing this form in the form builder, it actually generates a custom API endpoint for us. So if I exit the form builder, and by the way, if you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. I'm going to see these. I'm going to answer these at the end. Happy to answer any questions you have. Just drop them in the chat. But so going back to the list of forms, you see this little link. Most people just use the URL of the form and they share that, right? Or they might embed it on their website or use it in the website builder. But there's an advanced way you can connect to your forms. And we have a custom API endpoint that's generated for you automatically. So if I click on this, I already got it open in a new tab. It automatically, FlowTrack created a custom API endpoint to match the data that's on your form. Now, the cool thing about this is let me open up the form URL too. So this form URL that you're using when you fill out the form, it actually submits the data to FlowTrack, right? This is a form that actually connects to our API. So when you use the form builder, you're building the visual user interface for this form. This is a very primitive example of a form, right? Of course, you can customize it to get it look exactly how you want, but this is the user interface. And when someone fills this out, it actually sends the data to this API. So this API we're using right here is the same API FlowTrack uses for the hosted form. So on here, you're going to see what fields are required. Now, these fields that are required or not required, even the field name, this is the data that I set up in the form builder. So everything you drag has a name. Everything you drag in the form builder can also be required or not required. And so this is what I ended up setting up. So I got a question: do they need window cleaning? Yes or no. Do they need carpet cleaning? Yes or no. I got a price, the price of the service, which is actually a hidden field. And I got the number of floors that the customer has in their home. And then I got first name, last name, and email. Now, I only made 3 of these fields required on the form. And so that's okay. And so we can just pass in whatever's required and we can get a response. And let me show you what the response is. Actually, before I show you the response, let me show you I can actually set the field name, because it's a great practice to make sure your fields have, user-friendly, readable names. So I'm going to go back into my form builder. I'm going to open up this HS demo right here, and we're going to come in and we're going to make sure that these have beautiful user-friendly names. So I just hover over one of these fields. I click on settings, and then under field, it's going to say property name. And property name, this is the name that's showing up in the API documentation, right? So if I go back over here, right, this field is called Windows because I named it Windows. So always make sure you put a cool name in there so it's easy for you and everyone else to understand. So let's show you how you can use this API, right? And so this API URL, this is the URL of the API, right? And these are the fields it expects. So you can open up a tool like Postman or Postman itself. I like Postman. So I'm going to open up that and actually have another thing open in a new window. So let me go ahead and share another window. Let's see where that is. And we'll go ahead and get that going. Stop screen share, share new screen, and we'll go ahead and post up Postman. All right. So here is the API. Here's Postman, a tool where you can connect to your API. So all you got to do here is we're going to put in the URL that we're sending the data to, which is from the API docs. And then under body, we're going to start passing in the name of the field and the value of the field, right? So we knew that first name, last name, and email was required. So that's what we're going to put in there. Now, this other thing that's required in there is the input ID, right? And this is really just like the source or the form, right? It's the form ID. You can even get that from the URL. So if you noticed in the API documentation, there was an ID in the URL. I just copied and pasted that in the URL. So it would be great if I could share maybe 2 things at a time, and I guess not, but I'll just toggle back and forth between them to show you how this works. So let me come back in here. So once you go ahead and paste these 3 values, there's one other thing you need to do, and that's set up the authorization. So every custom form you design has a unique API key associated with it. So only this API key can access this form by default. And let me show you how this works. So there's 2 parts to an API key. You got the public key and you got a secret key. Now, by default, when you create your forms, you can only write data to the forms. So you only need a public key, right? The whole world can see this key, right? If you have a form on your website, that key is visible because everyone has to be able to see and fill out the form. So everyone needs to know the key to be able to fill out that form. Now, if you get in a scenario where you want to actually pull data or read data or update data to a form, that's when you'll need to use the secret key. I'm going to show you where you can get these, the public key and the secret key, but I just want to show you here in Postman, you're going to put those keys under the basic auth, right? So you come in under authorization, it'll say type basic auth. Here, I just put in my public key as the username, right? And so let me dive back into the other screen now. So I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to go back into FlowTrack, and I'm going to show you where we can actually get these keys, because that is an important part. So we're going to go back in, go into the API docs. Here we go. And this was the ID of the input right here in the URL. It says L822OB. If you can see in my address bar, that was the value I used for the input ID. But let's go back into FlowTrack. So the best way to get that key, I like going to the tracking or tracks dashboard. On here, you're going to have a line item for every track or every entry point into FlowTrack, right? And every entry point can trigger a flow, hence the name FlowTrack. Your tracks can trigger flows. So if you click on this track, which is my home services demo, this is the form I was just editing, and I click on Edit Track, I can come down here and I can see there's a tab called API Permissions. Now, this is where you can control what key has access to this track, first of all, and then what that key can do, right? And so first of all, this is set as public key auth only. So you only need this public key to create something on this API. And so you can actually see what permissions this key has, right? So you have read, create, update, delete. That's known as CRUD. And so this API key can only create records, right? And that's what we want because it's only submitting the form. But we could change that here if we wanted to. So this is the key the API key that I'm using in Postman to go ahead and send that form data. So I just copied and pasted this value here. And so I'm going to go back into Postman and share my screen so you can actually see what I'm doing there. Let's go ahead and share a new screen. So come in here to Postman. So that's the exact value I posted in here. All right, so I got my API key, got my URL, and I got the body of the data I'm going to send. So now when I actually submit this form, and let's go ahead and just put in a new name in here. I'm going to put Mike Bob, and I'm going to put in a new email in here, something like that. There we go. So I'm going to click send, and now I'm going to see the output of the flow, which is really cool. So for those that weren't here for one of our previous videos, we had this flow, and I'll open it up to show you, but the step at the end was to redirect the user to another URL. And that URL included the price of the home services quote. So in this case, it was a $99 price for the home services, and it redirects the user to the with their name in the URL. So this step actually just returns the output, so you could do something with it if you wanted to when you're calling this API. So that was it. Just by sending that form post, a few things happened, and let me show you. First of all, the first thing that happened was a contact was created inside FlowTrack. So I'm going to come in here, share my other window again, and I'm going to show you what happened. So going back into the database, right, I can actually see that a new contact, Mike Bob, was created. Perfect. I can click on Mike Bob. I can go ahead and I can see that this home services demo ran, right? I can see this was created from the form home services demo. And I can actually click on this to see the output or the details of the flow. And so this one right here had 2 steps in it. First one was actually running some custom code, right? So we had some custom logic generating the home services quote, which is really cool. And the next step was redirect the user to the URL. So that ran the same way as if I just filled out the form normally. Let's dive into that flow, and I can show you, visually what happened. So this was a really simple flow. It generated a quote, and then it redirected the user to another URL, right? And so I have the just Google in here as an example, but I put the price of the home services quote and the contact's first name. And that's exactly what we saw in the output, right? That's exactly what we wanted. And so this is a great way where you can accomplish 2 different things. One, you can literally input any data into FlowTrack. You can dream up, right? Although we use this for forms, you can use it for anything, right? It doesn't have to be a form. It could be anytime you want to get data into FlowTrack. I've seen people use this to, let's say, trigger automations when they're using, let's say, a third-party system or CRM that they already have and they can't leave. Maybe it's Salesforce, maybe it's Marketo. Maybe they want to trigger something like when someone clicks on an email, and Marketo might send an API to FlowTrack to say, hey, this person clicked. And then you're doing some action based on that, like adding the user in the pipeline, something along those lines. But you can do this for anything. It's really about what do you want, what data do you want to get inside FlowTrack, and then what automation do you want to happen based on that data. And so you have a lot of flexibility in there. And so I do see we have a few people jumping in, writing in some comments. So people saying, thanks, Mike. Well, back at you. Thank you for joining today. And we got some people asking, what is FlowTrack built on? So FlowTrack is built on Amazon Web Services, right? So we use AWS on the back end. You can also check out policy.flowtrack.co, and you can get more information about our tech stack. And we got some other people saying this was fire. So thank you for that. Appreciate that as well. So this is one way that you can connect to the APIs. And so let me know if you guys have any questions. Super easy. Once you get the data into FlowTrack, of course, you can trigger that flow and do what it is next. Now, the second way you can connect to our APIs is just using our public API docs, right? And so that's at myapidocs, that's with an S.com. And here it's going to give you step-by-step instructions, what you need to do to actually connect to the API. And so, it all starts off with clicking this button, run in Postman, and then it's going to say, hey, do you want to open up in Postman on the web or on your Mac? or PC, etc. And here it's going to walk you through how you can get the API key to log in. Now you have two different ways you can log into the API. One is using your username and password, and the other is using an API key. So if I leave this page right here, we can come in and go in under settings. And under settings, you have this thing called access keys. Now, access keys control who has access to your system, right? And so each access key has a public key and a private key pair. You can think of it as just like a username and a password, right? And so when you click on create access key, it's going to ask you what system can this access key access, right? Well, it's going to access my current system, the one that I'm using. Now, if you're, black label and you're creating multiple systems, or white label and you're creating multiple systems, right? You may be able to change that here. And then you can put in a little note like who this is assigned to. And this just may be like my API, right? Just type in a note. And then you can give this access key a role. So just like a user in your system has a role, so you can control what this person can and cannot do inside FlowTrack, API keys are exactly the same. It's just like a person, right? This API has all access or limited access. So you can make sure that whoever's using this API only can see and do things that you want them to do. But once you go ahead and click save, you're going to get a access key pair, so username and password. And that's what we're going to use inside Postman. Right, so it's that easy to create an access key. And if you ever need to deactivate that for any reason, you can just flip this switch and turn it off. Now, once you have that access key, that username and password, we're just going to go back into Postman, and we're going to go ahead and put that in the environment settings. So I'm going to dive into Postman again. And so once I imported my Postman collection, again, the steps are right here, step by step, what you need to do. All you have to do is go in and click on environments. And under your environment configuration, you're going to put your access key here under public key and private key. So username and password. And that's how you're going to be able to connect to the API. So it's that easy. Once you do that, everything else is done for you automatically in this collection. So you can literally just start going to the APIs and clicking run. So I got my key in there. I just go to this one, for example, get profile. I click send, right? It gets the profile, right? If I want to say get billing info, let's say get payment method list, click send, right? It gets payment method list, which in this case is nothing, right? So it's really easy to manage everything with the API once you just set in your access key. Let's see, we'll get a list of phone numbers, right? And we'll just say get, and now I got a list of phone numbers. So that's it. You're going to start instantly experimenting with every single API FlowTrack has to offer. You have examples for pretty much everything in here, success and fail responses. So you can play with that. Let me know if you guys have any questions. This was the topic of today's Lunch and Learn. So we're going to be, showing you how you can connect to the API. I know this was a common question you guys had. And so now you got two cool ways that you can connect to that, either using the built-in FlowTrack APIs or using your own. So go ahead and drop in anything else. Now is the time. We're going to let the community control the discussion. So if you have any questions on any topic, it doesn't even have to be related to APIs. We can go ahead and go over that now on the video. So anything's possible. Let's see, we got some in here saying, where can we learn more on the API and what they can do? So that's a great question. And so this is going to be back on the API documentation. So if I share my other screen again, I'm going to go back to, let's see, stop screen share, stop screen. Okay. So if we go back to the other tab right here, I'm going to go back to the window. And if you go to myapidocs.com, you can see in my browser URL, this is where you can see everything that you can do in the API. So again, this is going to be using the built-in APIs. So, and the best way to understand what you could do with the API is look inside FlowTrack, right? Everything you can do in FlowTrack, you can do with the API. So I'm talking about editing a form, creating a new form, creating a contact, adding a tag, right? Adding people to automation flows. Anything you can do inside the app, you can do on the API, again, because we use our own API. And so that's a great way to see what you can do. Now, the next thing, like I was showing you, is you can post the data from your forms. So any form you create can be a form that can capture data from the API and trigger that automation. So great question, and really good question. Let me know if you have any more on that. Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. Okay. All right, sorry about that, guys. So I'll go ahead and repeat back what I was saying. Robin was asking about where can we, let's see. Robin was asking how can you process maybe like a collection of data or data in a form, and I was going to give you guys an example like the cars. We'll say let's keep track of cars that people own. So I may make a form that has like year, make, and model of a car, right? And you can save that, and then with that you could have some sort of contact identifier. Maybe it's the contact's email or phone number, something like that. Every time you submit this form, it's like adding a collection of items to a table, or items to a table, because now you have what cars this user owns, right? And so I want you to think of forms like tables, because that's how we're designing it. And so in the future, it's going to be a table. So you can list out, let's say, all the cars that are in your system, right? So it's going to be a complete CMS. So that's how you would work with like a collection where you have a one-to-many relationship, right? One person can have, one or more cars, or zero or more cars. That's how I would do it in the system. So great question. Thank you for that. And then let's see. Next, we got. So is there any examples of hooks or webhooks? So great question. And so we do webhooks a really cool way, I think, right? And so some systems lock you into only doing webhooks around some predefined events. And so what we do is we give you the power of the webhook to do it anywhere and everywhere you want, anytime you want, right? So, and I'll give you an example. So other systems, they may have a webhook when like contact is created and contact is updated, opportunity updated, opportunity created. Well, what if you want to do something else? What if you want to do webhook when the price or the opportunity size is above $1,000, right? Well, how are you going to do that? Well, now you can with FlowTrack, because we have sorry, I'm still getting over a little bit of a cough, but we have this custom API step, and this works as a webhook, right? And so you can drag this anywhere on the flow. You just put in the webhook URL where you want to send the data, right? And all you have to do is come in here and add one variable at the bottom. It says all form field data, right? And so you can send all the data from the form with this webhook if it is a form. Or you can send individual fields, like maybe on your webhook you just want, first name, and then you want email, right? So you can come in here and just come in here and specify the data that you want to send. I might put in first name and email, right? And so once you have this webhook step, and I'll just put in a dummy URL, like google.com. Let's say I'll save that. Now I can put this anywhere in a flow, right? And I could put a condition above it, like, is the opportunity size greater than this? Or if you're waiting for an SMS reply, like, did the person say yes, yes to my SMS, right? If they did, do a webhook, right? So you can put that literally anywhere you want in the system for unlimited webhook possibilities. You're not locked in. So great question on that. Really good question. All right, perfect. So one person's asking if the customer uses Bria, can the calls still be recorded and tagged to the contact? So absolutely yes. It doesn't matter, what soft phone or even hard phone that you're using. Everything's based on that caller ID. So as long as there's a caller ID with the phone, then we have a phone number to match that call to a contact. So great question. The one thing I'll throw out there is use toll-free numbers, right? Because it's impossible to call a toll-free number and hide your caller ID. So if you use caller ID numbers, you always have that contact's phone number, which is great. If you're not using a toll-free number, then obviously it's possible contacts may call you with private caller ID or caller ID blocked, and then you're not going to always get those calls matched to your contact. So just something to keep in mind. But great question. Let's see. This person is saying that I know we don't need to learn code for FlowTrack, but are there any good resources, courses that can help us learn more advanced creative things that we do in FlowTrack? So that's a great question. We are a no-code platform first, right? And so, but at the same time, we're code capable, right? We're developers, and we know that developers love to do things their own way and then customize the heck out of things. So this is why we do things like make the custom API step and make the custom node.js step, where you can literally just write your own code at that point. Now that's for the top 2% of people that are in here really rocking FlowTrack. So just know that is in there, but we're a no code platform first, but code capable. But if you're wanting to learn more about that, maybe Node.js code, ECMAScript, or webhooks, APIs, I think Udemy would probably be a good resource. So udemy.com. You can get some really good info on there. And I would just maybe learn about, excuse me, learn about webhooks and, JavaScript. I think that would be a great place to learn. Now, I haven't learned any courses on that from here. So, but I think they pretty much have anything you can think of. So if you want to pick up a simple JavaScript or webhooks class, that would be the first place I would actually check. And of course, YouTube. There's a lot of great free content on YouTube. So check that out as well. All right, so we got another person asking, where can we add code to the system to edit the UI? Great question. So as a white label user, right, you got tons of great options in here on how you can customize the UI. So first thing is navigation. Now, everyone has their own brand and their own color scheme that they love. So we made it so you can come in here and you can customize every little thing. Like, let's say you want calendar to be this icon, right? And you want you want it to be red, whatever you want to do, you can come in here and change that, change the background color, etc. Even the text, right? And you can completely change this how you want, and of course reorganize these things with drag and drop. Now you do have that sort of customization just built in here. Built in here in a no code way, but you also have, again, being back to code capable, you got some code capable ways using the JavaScript in here. So for those of you developers, JavaScript wizards in here, you could write some function to target the ID of a specific div and move it around or change it, that sort of stuff. But this is where you could put any sort of custom code for your system. Now, I do want to point out that this custom code runs on your sub accounts, right? So when you're testing this, you got to add it and then actually log into your sub account so you can see what they see, because our custom code runs on your account, right? And then your custom code runs on your customer's accounts. And then so you're a customer, you're going to see our custom code, which is how we get this chat widget to pop up, right? So since you're our customer, you see our chat, you got our chat widget. So that's why that works like that. But that's where you would go to check that out. So great question. So this person was asking, what about the Zapier and Pabbly integration? So we do have that too, right? So I can go into the Flow Builder, and inside the Flow, we got a Zapier demo right here, actually. Well, this one's pretty simple, but just one step in a flow sends to Zapier. Right, so you got a URL from Zapier you can send the data to, and then you can send the data. So it's very similar to the webhook step or API call step. Really, we just need a URL and then the data you want to send. So super easy to connect to Zapier or Pabbly. Same process for both. So great question about that. And then this person's asking, it says for Bria, you need a username, password, and domain name. That's absolutely correct. So you can get the username and password today on the phone. Excuse me. I might have to cut this short because I'm just getting my cough back. But you can get the username and password on your extension list. So your extension list is going to have the username and password here. When you click on that, it'll show you that. For the domain, reach out to support, and one of our tier 2 supports can get you the domain for that. And in the future, we'll be showing the domain on that page as well. A great question. And let's see, we got, let's see, another person was asking about, they have another phone system. Can they integrate that with FlowTrack? So the only options you have are the FlowTrack phone system or Twilio if you're doing SMS. The reason we went out and built our own phone system and VoIP stack is because you can do cool things that you just can't do with other systems, right? Like automatically having phone calls trigger flows, increasing contact scores if the known customer is calling back a few times, matching up the calls to contacts, that sort of stuff. So if we tried to put in any other phone system, we'd really be compromising functionality in there, which wouldn't be as good of a user experience. Let's see. Another person was asking, if a customer has called before and dropped, can the caller be identified and the call forwarded to a supervisor, for instance? So not sure what you mean by dropped, if you can clarify that, but the call was dropped, like the customer hung up, you wouldn't be able to forward it to the supervisor in that case, but you could create a task in a pipeline, right? And say, hey, this call was dropped or customer hung up, follow up with them that way. That would be one way you could do it. Great question. Another person asking about you're curious about the window cleaning home services quote generator. So absolutely. We did another video on this. Should be on our Facebook group. So that's the FlowTrack official Facebook group. Check that out. Should also be on YouTube. If you check out our FlowTrack YouTube channel, you can see that home services quote video. This one is really cool because the home services quote video someone had made, using a different third-party tool, and it took them what seemed like or looked like 500 steps in some sort of automation to generate some simple quote, based on if you want your windows cleaned, the carpet cleaned, etc. And so we did it, which is one step, using some custom code to make life a lot easier. Okay, another person's asking about, can we upcharge a la carte price for the phone minutes? Let me see if we got that one on. Let me show you which ones we do have. So if you go into the white label package builder, I'm going to pull up my gold super package, for example. So we do have the SMS phone. So right now the markup for the minutes is based on the phone numbers section. There was a ticket in the queue. It looks like it's not out or live yet, but There's one to separate the talk time minutes versus the phone number markup, because maybe you want to mark up one differently than the other, but you can come in here and slide, that markup that you want. The cool thing about this system is, obviously, with our pricing, let's say better than Twilio for outbound calling, for example. I think they're 1.4 cents a minute, and we're less than a penny a minute. They can mark that up and still be cheaper than them in that case, which is great. But we'll let you know when we get that the phone number one separated from the minutes. Great question. And same thing with all the other billing. And let me tell you, this is one of the one of the common questions we get inside the package builder is, well, how can I make sure my customer sub account doesn't rack up a big, phone bill or SMS bill, and I'm left, holding the bag? Well, and I guess people are asking that because from other systems that's possible, but in FlowTrack it's not, right? In the sense that in order for the user to use the phone, they have to actually add add a balance to their account, right? And so that means them actually adding funds to their account and funding it before they can send SMS, unless of course you say SMS is included in their plan, which you can do. So definitely, there's no extra upsell for like a SaaS mode or something like that. Just the billing just works out of the box. It's the same thing that we use for our customers, right? So when you come in and you want to send SMS, right, you add funds to your account by clicking on this button, add funds. And if you don't add funds, you can't send SMS. That's just how it works. So that's a common thing that comes up, but a great question. And we got Danny asking, how can we get a hard phone connected to the FlowTrack system? So we did get an article done about connecting a soft phone to the system. It's the same process for a hard phone. Only difference is you might have a different place to go get the settings. But long story short, even the hard phones, like physical phones you put on your desk, are going to have a spot for a username, password, and domain. And once you know where to put that, it's just the same username, password, and domain, no matter what device that you're using. But you can reach out to me, Danny, and we'll see if what type of phone you're using, and maybe we'll make a guide on where you can find that setting on that, whether that's like a Polycom phone, etc. So missed call text back. Can you do missed call text back? So absolutely, that's something you could do in a flow, right? So in a flow, you can have missed call text back. I see this is really common too for people that are doing like, let's say, ad campaigns, and the person that you're transferring the call to missed the call, right? And you want to text them the lead info. So you might have, I don't know if I have a call flow like this, but this would be an example right here where you could have a transfer call step. If the business doesn't answer, it'll go down the no answer branch, and that no answer branch may send a SMS to the business saying, hey, you missed a new lead, call them, right? At the same time, you're sending the caller to a voicemail, right? So they can leave a message. So you could do something like that. It's the same process for missed call text back, right? And I just realized you can't see the whole screen here. Same process for missed call text back. So you might transfer it to another line or another extension, and if they don't answer, it was missed, right? Then you might want to text the customer saying, hey, I'm on another call. Let me call you back in 5 minutes. Or here's my meeting link to book a call, something like that. So that's how you would do that. Use this transfer call step and then the no answer branch. So great question. Let's see. We got some other questions. Someone's talking about on the drop call question. Let's say if John was talking to a client, but the call had to be continued at a later time, can we assign it so that whenever the client calls back in, they're directed to John's queue first? Great question. And so let's see, we got on the transfer call step. Let me see, trying to think. So you want to transfer it to John when they call back. Let me think about that one. I think we can do that just on the phone number one. Let me see. The way I would do that is actually just using the contact owner. So if we have the contact owner, let's say a certain owner is assigned to a contact, that owner, we could then transfer their call to their phone number. I think we would need to put the variable in here for the transfer call step to get that to work, but have it transfer to the owner of the contact when they call back. I think that could be a really cool idea. So good question on that one. Let's talk more about that. I don't see who that is either, just as Facebook user. So if you can send me a message, love to chat more about that. So other people saying, great. Thanks, Mike. Get well. Well, thank you. I was doing well, and then I start talking a lot. My voice is going out. So appreciate that. So one person was asking if you update something in our system. It says update now. So I think when you're talking about when you add something, when you add a contact to a flow, sometimes it'll say like, hey, this flow user is pending to be processed. Usually it's processed within milliseconds, sometimes within a couple seconds. So you can always click the button, and if you're impatient, just process it now. And then, so that's to answer that question. And so what's a reasonable upcharge on phone and SMS? So that's a great question, right? And so one of the things that we tried to do is come up with the best pricing that we can for phone and SMS. So you can mark it up and still be cheaper than the competition, right? So again, going back into Twilio's, let's say, outbound phone pricing, 1.4 cents a minute to make a call compared to 0.9 of a cent a minute. And so I would say, hey, anytime you can mark up your price and match or be slightly below your competition, you're killing it, especially when you can add more value, right? Because you could even be higher than the competition. It doesn't matter because you're adding so much more value. You got the drag and drop call flow builder, right? Who cares if your price is higher when you got more value, right? It's pricing it for the value and the problem that you solve. So feel free to price it higher, but at the same time, just know you can still price it and be cheaper than the next guy and make more money because of our amazing pricing on that. So great question. But I'd say check out, let's say, Twilio.com for their pricing as an example. And you can kind of get an idea for what the market pricing is at this point. Let's see. This person's asking about, do you have a video that shows how to build a specific business model, agency, e-com, etc.? So we did do a call last week. Basically the setup basics for setting up your agency. Be happy to share that, and you guys can get access to that. So for people that don't know, we've been doing these calls 3 times a week. So we got the Lunch and Learn Mondays, 1 p.m. Eastern. Then we got Caviar Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then we got Champagne Fridays also at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we're going to be sending out these recordings here. So please register here. I'll drop the link into the comments so you can check it out. If you register for the Caviar Wednesdays, we'll go ahead and send out the recordings, these past recordings to these users so you can get access to this. So definitely check that out. We got a lot of great content on there. So I appreciate all the questions. I know we got a bunch more, but I'm not going to push my luck with my cough coming back. So I appreciate all you guys. Thank you for joining us for Lunch and Learn Monday. I'll see you guys next on Caviar Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you guys have other topics or ideas of things that you want to see on these calls, let us know. Drop them in the comments. This is how we're going to be making this content. It's going to be community-driven content so we can deliver the killer content that you guys want to see. So I'll see you guys next time. I appreciate all of you, and have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Take care.